Hello there. Thank you for attending this presentation. My name is Aurelian Murray, and I am one of two team members that worked on this project. I had the pleasure of working with Daniel Valencia as my team member, and together we contributed a lot to this project. Without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about this volunteer attendance system. There is a program that started back in the spring of 2015 called the CS First Outreach Program. And what this program tries to achieve is to spread the knowledge of coding and computer science to elementary and middle schools. So essentially, it would be FIU students who volunteer to teach younger students in these elementary and middle schools about code. But there's several problems that came with this program. Is that it became as the program became more popular, the process of matching volunteers to teams was much more tedious. So it's not really a scalable solution. The process of matching volunteers to teams lies in an Excel sheet, and that is it's a laborious process for the administrators running this program. Another problem with this current system is there's no proper communication in place. So everything lies within emails, and it's just a traditional way of communicating with people, and it's not a great solution. And the last problem is accountability. It is known that some volunteers would simply not show up to the elementary schools, and it would be a problem because the administrators would think that they would attend, but they wouldn't let them know in advance, and sometimes no volunteers would show up at all, and that's a big problem for the program. So that's where our solution comes into hand. We call it the volunteer attendance system, and it's a web-based application that allows administrators to easily create and manage users, schools, and most importantly, teams. All three different types of users, which are the administrators, volunteers, and school personnel, can log into our system. Administrators can create and edit all these different types of entities, which are the users, schools, and teams, like I've said. Volunteers can log into the system and see the teams that they have been assigned to, as well as the team members' contact information, as well as the school personnel contact information. And lastly, the school personnel can log into our system and see the teams that have been assigned to their school. Here's a list of requirements that have been assigned for this particular project. The first one being it should be accessible from any device. That is ultimately why we chose to go the web application route. User accounts with email and password authentication, so users should be able to log in. Like I've noted earlier, administrators should be able to manage users, schools, and teams. School personnel should be able to view team information for the teams that have been assigned to their school. And lastly, volunteers should be able to view their team information. So this includes the contact information for the team members, as well as administrators and school personnel. In the 6 development sprints that we had to work on this project, we were able to implement roughly 80 user stories, so that is quite the accomplishment for me and my team member. An example of an important user story was user story 8, which was assigned 4 points. It was 4 out of 5 points. And this is as an administrator, I want to be able to create volunteers so that I can assign them to teams. And the acceptance criteria was, given the administrator is already logged in, and the admin is on the volunteer management page, when the admin clicks on the add icon located at the top right corner of the volunteer table, then the add volunteer form should display on the screen. And given that the administrator has entered all the volunteer fields correctly, when the admin clicks the add button at the bottom of the form, then the message saying that they have successfully added a volunteer should show up. And lastly, this new volunteer has been added to the database. So this is the use case diagram for the VAS application. As you can see, the administrator has most of the functionality that deals with management. So the administrator can manage admins, volunteers, school personnel, schools, and teams. All the types of users can log in, log out, and view their profile. The volunteer and school personnel, what they can really do is simply view the teams that they're assigned to and the teams that have been assigned to their school. So this is just an overview of all the use cases of our system. So here is the sequence diagram for the same use case that I mentioned earlier, which is the creation of a volunteer. So the first few steps you see on the sequence diagram is the logging in of an administrator. Of course, the administrator needs to be able to log in first before they can do anything. Once they log in, they are redirected to the administrator dashboard page, where they're presented with different options, and the administrator can click on the volunteer management button, where they're redirected to the volunteer management page. From there, they can click the add button located at the top right corner of the volunteer table, and a form will pop up where they can enter all the fields for the new volunteer. Once they are finished, they can click the add button, and then the system first checks to see whether or not the email already exists in the database. And if it does, it'll spit out an error. Otherwise, it'll continue to check the rest of the form and make sure everything is valid, no fields are left empty, things like that. Lastly, if everything passes, then it goes ahead and creates the volunteer into the system. And the last step is the system fetches the new list of volunteers and updates the display with the latest information of the volunteers. The design of our system reflects that of a three-tier architecture. As you can see, the front end, which is the client, runs on React, and that interacts with Express, which is pretty much a standard server framework for Node.js, which is our back end. As you can see there's Mongoose, which basically manages the relationship between the data and also provides us a schema validation for our database. And in this case, we're using a NoSQL database, which is MongoDB. This is the deployment diagram for our system. As you can see, the design reflects the three-tier architecture I just mentioned. It's important to note that the front end and back end, as well as the database, are running on one single virtual machine. And this virtual machine is being hosted by the computer science department at FIU. So moving along, this is the ER diagram for our database. As you can see, we have a user table, which links all three types of users, which are the school personnel, volunteer, and the administrator. You can also note that the school personnel is affiliated with a school, and that a team is the connection between a volunteer or multiple volunteers and a school. Next, we have the class diagram. This looks very similar to the ER diagram, but we have the method calls here for each class. As you can see, all users can log in and view their profile, but only the administrator can edit their profile and create different types of users. Administrators can also create and edit schools, as well as create and edit teams. The volunteers can toggle their status for carpooling. That's where you see change car available status. And both the volunteer and school personnel can view the team information, the team details of the team that they have been assigned to. And that's the only bit of functionality that those two users have. Here is a sunny day scenario of the add volunteer use case. The purpose of this test case is to show that a registered administrator should be able to successfully create a new volunteer. So the test setup would be that an administrator, Jerry Smith, is logged into the application and is on the volunteer management page. They click on the add volunteer button and they fill out all the appropriate information, as you can see. And once they click the add button, as expected, a success message alerts that the new user has been created. A rainy day scenario for this one would be that one of these fields has been left empty, and as a result, we get an error message saying that that specific field, which in this case is the Panther ID, is a required field, and we get an error message. So this one passes as well. Here are a few screenshots of our system. This is the login page. On the left, we have the desktop view, and on the right, we have the mobile view. For our project, we made an emphasis to try to make the volunteer and school personnel logins to look mobile friendly, as these users will probably be on the go at all times. So it's really important that they can view their information nicely on the screen. And here we have the administrator dashboard. We have the admin tools on top. We have different buttons that lead to different areas. We have admins, volunteers, school personnel, schools, and teams. All of these have to do with management. And then below that, we have a quick calendar that shows what's going on during this particular week. And next we have just the volunteer and school personnel dashboards. As you can see, they're mobile friendly. For the volunteer, you can see the team that they've been assigned to. It says Calusa Elementary. This is just a test user. And on the right, you have the different teams because this is the school personnel dashboard, and they can see all the teams that have been assigned to their particular school. So this concludes the presentation. Overall, this project was a great experience for both Daniel and I. We are very proud of the work that we were able to accomplish in just one semester. It was really great. I want to thank Daniel for being a great team member, as well as Christy for being a wonderful product owner. Thank you to anyone watching this presentation, and have a great day.